I first met Elise back in 2016. I was at Emirates Team New Zealand with Dan Bernasconi, and he was showing me through the whole design process they were going through for the catamaran that would eventually go up and win the America's Cup. This young girl came into the room with a basket of muffins. Someone said to me, "Oh, that's a really, really good sailor, Elise Beavis."
She had told us from quite a young age that she wanted to work for Team New Zealand, but Team New Zealand was, at that time, an incredibly male-dominated domain.
She'd emailed the team and asked if there were any jobs going. I said, sorry, no, there's nothing available.
Both her parents looked at each other and said, she's dreaming.
And then I got an email back an hour or so later saying, please could I just come in and talk to you? And I said, okay, sure. By the end of that interview, she talked me into giving her an internship with the team.
She finished handing out the muffins, walked over to one of the biggest computers in the room, fired it up. The next thing I know, Dan Bernasconi is sitting beside Elise as Elise explains what they will need to do aerodynamically if they're going to use cyclists. So much for the muffins.
When I first talked to Elise, I could see that she was super passionate about sailing, but also about engineering, and also had an understanding of the deep engineering principles of how a sailing boat works. You know, that's a pretty rare combination and exactly the kind of thing that's super valuable within Team New Zealand.
We should always be aware never to doubt our children's dreams. It's a salient lesson to us all.
She was the New Zealand Female Sailor of the Year. How she manages to cram that in with her work at Team New Zealand, I don't know, but she's a very special person.
I think Elise is an incredible role model for our young wahine. Here she is at the top of a largely male-dominated field, and she looks totally at home. This is where she belongs.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2023 Young Alumna, Elise Beavis. Presenting the medallion is Abigail Swanepoel, who took part in the 2022 Dean's Leadership Program in the Faculty of Engineering.
So not only is Elise an Emirates Team New Zealand America's Cup champ 2 times over so far, not only is she a performance engineer specialising in computational fluid dynamics like the rest of us, Elise is a world champion. Last year she won the 2022 WASZP Games in Italy. You saw her darting around there. So let's come to Emirates Team New Zealand in a moment, but let's start with the WASZP. What was it that attracted you to that class?
So through school, I'd sort of sailed the typical junior youth classes, and at the end of school, I'd realised that, you know, I could pursue this Olympic pathway, but actually getting to the games is something that only so few achieve. And at the same time, at school, maths and physics are my strongest subjects and the subjects I enjoyed the most. So I made the decision after sort of learning a bit more about engineering that I'd focus on the engineering, the academics, the goal of working at Team New Zealand instead of trying to go to the Olympics. And then through my degree, we have to do 800 hours in industry and internships in order to graduate. And I did 2 internships at a company called Pure Design and Engineering. And one of the directors of that company, he had put his name down really early on the wait list for a WASZP. So I think that's where I heard about them. And I didn't want to go back to the class, which is a laser radial, which I was sailing at the end of school, where you work hard and go slow. A WASZP sounded a lot better, where if you work moderately hard, you go fast. So that sounded a lot more exciting and was at a price point that was manageable at the time compared to some other options out there.
How do you know when the boat is singing? And I'm talking about the WASZP here, not Team New Zealand.
You can go out sailing and you feel you haven't really got it going. There's some days you go sailing and it's not locked in, it's not really sending it forward, but yeah, when it really feels like it's sending, and you do often get some humming noise from the rudder or the mainfoil at the same time when you are sending it forward. It feels really awesome.
There's an interesting contrast between your racing and the WASZP, where you're by yourself, you're foiling, but all of your metrics come from the direction of the wind and the wave chop. You don't have 5G, you don't have real-time data, you don't have supercomputers or anything like that. And then you work with Emirates Team New Zealand, which is basically the opposite. Sure, you're foiling, but you have every little bit of data imaginable. How do you think about that contrast?
Yeah, at work there's almost too much data coming in to know what to do with all of it, whereas I find when I go sailing, I almost don't think about it that much. I sort of go with instincts, what it feels like, and trim the sail or change the angle that I'm pointing, or the decisions I make, a lot less thought goes into that, and it's a lot more about how things feel.
You said you love physics, you love maths.
Yeah.
What do you love about them?
I think part of it through school was the idea that if you got an answer and it was right, you'd write an English essay and you get some mark back, and I wouldn't really understand why I did well this week, but last week I did really badly. So yeah, and then also it's explaining the world around us, like on the basic thing, like if you let go of something, why does it drop? So understanding why things happen really appeals to me.
You came on with Team New Zealand at a critical time, so 2 America's Cup campaigns ago, and that infamous decision around whether or not to use cyclists instead of grinders, or cyclors as they became known. When they first told you about that concept in principle, what did you think?
Well, I thought, it makes sense, like legs a lot bigger than these, so to be able to get power out of legs instead of arms, it sounds pretty good on face value. There were some bigger challenges which I wasn't really involved in terms of when you're on a bike, your wheel's spinning, or if you're on an exercise bike at the gym, it's spinning around, and that's actually helping you keep going around and around, whereas on the boats, it's pumping hydraulics and there's no flywheel allowed. And there's actually this dead spot where you're not pushing and pulling. So that was a mechanical challenge for some of the other guys to overcome. But yeah, it sounded pretty cool, and it was incredible the fact that we kept that secret for so long. So, it's so easy to say, oh, we're using bikes, and everyone knows what a bike is. Like, if the technology we're keeping secret was something super technical, you could tell Joe Bloggs on the street and it would mean nothing to them, but saying we're using bikes, then that makes sense to everyone.
You took it up to the university, you trialled it in the wind tunnel. Was there an aha moment, a moment where the numbers came in, you saw the guys cycling away and you said, oh my goodness, this is going to work?
So yeah, we went up to the university really to validate our CFD results. So CFD is computational fluid dynamics. So it's using powerful computers to try and model what the air's doing as it flows over the boat or a part of the boat. And yeah, when I started, I was given this role of running CFD just started with one hull, later it was the whole boat with people in it, and some were standing up grinding, well stationary though, some were kneeling, some were on bikes facing all different ways, and that was saying that in addition to legs making more power to arms, that by using your legs, it meant that your hands were free to do other functions too. It was also saying that actually the aerodynamics of people on bikes was comparable to people kneeling grinding. And there was also an assumption that a lot of the time they'd be standing up grinding. So that's what the computer was saying. But, to really be sure of that result, we went to the wind tunnel and ran a whole range of configurations, and that lined up really well with what our computer simulation said. So it meant, that's another tick in the box for the bikes.
I'm going to ask you a question very similar to one that I asked Kirsten a couple of minutes ago. Emirates Team New Zealand, a lot of dudes on the dance floor. Was that intimidating?
I think I'm not that fussed by what gender people are around me. I guess going through junior and youth sailing, whether it's domestically, internationally, there are more male sailors in the world than females. Same in the physics class. I was the only girl in my physics class. We were in the minority in our advanced maths class. So that didn't faze me. And I think for me, it's a lot more about doing what I want to do. Like, it doesn't really matter who's around you as long as you get on with them. But doing what you want, and we're definitely seeing it now. Actually, Tanya's in the audience here tonight, and she's also part of a design team. And there's another girl, Kelly, who was also around last campaign. And, that younger generation with more females coming out of university with engineering degrees that Auckland's been really big on pushing. It's this incremental change occurring.
we hear a lot about STEM education, and as you've mentioned, there's been a real emphasis in the last few years. What would you say to a 15-year-old who is maybe considering a future in maths but feeling a bit unsure about it?
I think if it's what you're interested, it's what you want to do, it's something that you can apply to an area that you might be interested in. So for me, it's that academic maths and physics with the sailing, but you could be interested in something completely different to sailing. And that way of combining what you're into and what you're good at, just do that. Don't worry about what anyone else says to you. You do what you want to do.
Is there another class you want to race? Would you be in Sail GP or, I don't know, maybe the Volvo around the world?
I think I quite like going back to my bed at night. So freeze-dried food and being salty for weeks on end, I'm not really sure if that's what I'd really love to do. But for me, it's, this technical side. That's where I can feel I can give the most to the sport, and fitting in the WASZP sailing around it where I can. And the beauty of that being a one design class, meaning that you can have time away and hop back in and everything's still the same, means it's what works.
I know you and the team are very good at keeping secrets, as you've noted, but you've been testing the new AC75 for the next America's Cup in the last few weeks. Can you give us any inside information there about how things are shaping up for Barcelona?
Yeah, things are looking good. So we've got our cup-winning boat, Te Rehitai, back out on the water these last 2 weeks. The decks had a big job. The grinders are out. The bikes are on because they're allowed this time. And these last 2 weeks we've just been sort of putting her through the paces, starting off really benign conditions, then a bit more wind. Last sailing day went out on more waves, and everything's going really well.
Well, thank you. Good luck. And please join me in congratulating Elise Beavis.